interesting. Warm greetings, my dear Violet. How are you in this moment?
I am well. So grateful to see you. So good to be together. Delighted.
Exactly. I feel delighted as well, too, and wanted to wish you a happy Mother's Day 2024, my friend. How's your day been?
Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful. And I'm so thrilled that we have aligned. And here is the day that we are birthing this beautiful podcast. It feels very, very healing. And I'm really grateful. Really, thank you for the invite.
Oh my goodness, I am boundlessly grateful to you for saying yes to this invitation to the first inaugural episode of SCCaR podcast. And SCCaR is the Sacred Cracks, Crevices and Rubies. And this podcast is really a container to have conversations where we share our sacred cracks and our crevices, really our wounding, and the journey to taking that wounding, taking those cracks and crevices and turning them into rubies, into jewels that really form who we are, that service us as well as those within our sphere of influence. So thank you so very much for being part of co-creating and birthing this into the world.
Thank you so much. I think this is really, these conversations are the foundations of our friendship, is how we have grown, our commitment to growth, and
Indeed.
that deep looking inside our inner landscape. So good to be in community together as always.
Absolutely. You remind me of really what undergirds this is for me, this sense of deep gratitude for the universe sending into my life souls like you, and the conversations that we've had and how healing they have been. And this notion, I think for both of us, this constant move to share, this constant need to be in service. And so it feels really good to share what we get to experience when we have our conversations with those who feel moved and called to engage with us through this forum, to see how this might serve them, as well as the two of us are really emanating out what comes from this conversation. So
yeah, these ripples that we get to send out into the ethers. And
Indeed.
that we know that when we're vulnerable, we give permission for others.
Yeah.
And also that it's a sense of belonging. That's what is arising for me right now. Yeah.
Indeed. Thank you so much for that. That's such a meaningful word to us both. It feels very meaningful in a world where we're seeing an epidemic in loneliness, in people not feeling a sense of belonging. So may this humbly serve to begin to cultivate that sense of belonging, if only in terms of recognizing ourselves in the stories that we hear and that we share. So really creating that space. And one of the practices the two of us shared early on was in the ways that we create space within our individual space that will help to soften us, help to ground us, so that opens up the possibility for us to go to places we never expected to go. So would you be open to sharing what your space looks like in the moment and how you configured it in preparation for this conversation?
I would love to. So I'm in my home office, which has been curated and cultivated with intention to create a grounding and a space that is nurturing for me. First thing I want to mention is the plant that's growing, having something green and alive that feels like it's blossoming as we are. And then I have some art near me and some of my favorite pieces of meditation. I have the mindfulness metta, of reminding myself to send out loving compassion. And I have a candle here that I know you do as well, that it's just reminding me of the light within, the light around. And it's very symbolic and very grounding. And So, yeah, it's
Indeed.
sweet little space here. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. And the same, we always have our lights, candles in the back, light in the back, candles in the front, as well too. And the candles also for me emphasizes or reminds me of the fires of transformation, which is something that's always important to us in our conversation. I've always shared with you how I feel transformed after every conversation we have. So it's that gentle fire, that alchemy, that our conversation. And then I also have the element of water here as well too, kind of very flowing, kind of the feminine energy of fire, and then water to drink and keep hydrated as a way of really regulating ourselves as we get into conversations that might be very delicate. Always, again, what we emphasize is self-care. That's a bit of a mantra for the two of us. And then some candles that you can't see because of the dark background, and then a few of the Buddhas here. So you have your metta, and then I have Buddha, but everything that's here in your space, in my space, very symbolic for the both of us. So thank you for sharing that. And continuing along the lines of grounding, again, very important to both of us. And one of the ways that we hope to share through this medium, through this podcast, is grounding within our bodies. So we have the outer space that we create, and the ways that we create that space internally. So if you feel open and welcome to sharing a grounding exercise that can kind of put us in a place internally that will foster and encourage and be of use to our conversation.
Thanks. And maybe we'll do a blend. I have one that I use often that's short, and it's about taking 3 intentional breaths. So I'm just going to invite us to first start with planting our feet and noticing our feet being flat on the earth, already supported.
Yep.
And then if you feel comfortable, you can close your eyes. And then bringing our attention to the natural rhythm of the inhale, noticing maybe even where that is in our chest rising. And then the exhale. And a couple more breaths together. No need to force or push, simply allowing the natural rhythm of the breath. Taking one more purposeful breath in, and then an audible exhale. As you feel ready, you can very gently and slowly allow the eyes to float open. Arriving in this moment. And G, anything you wanted to add for the grounding?
Would you be open to setting an intention? Both of us setting an intention for our conversation.
Absolutely. That sounds wonderful.
Do you wish to begin? Do you want to share your intention or keep it internal? What feels most resonant to you?
Let's share it. I like that. You know, we're adding kind of these ingredients to our recipe here. The first piece that shows up is sharing from a heart-centered space, expressing authentically, and flowing.
Yeah. Beautiful. Beautiful. Flowing resonates with me, as well as trusting the process, as well as vulnerability and not being afraid of that. If tears come, they come. If the voice crack, it cracks. It's all part of the recipe, as
Yes.
you humbly shared. So yeah, and then with your permission, letting that go so that the universe can do what it meant to do in bringing us together in this moment. So we have our humble ask, and then we surrender to whatever might
Indeed.
come. So beautiful.
Indeed.
So
Mm,
thank you again.
thank you.
So very much. And you ready to delve into a few
Yes.
questions?
Let's
Yay.
delve in.
We'll start with just a bit of orientation. Where are you in our beautiful world? Where are you situated in this moment?
I am in Southern California, in San Diego, and been here 30 years. So I'm feeling grounded in this part of the world, and yeah, really appreciate being where I am.
Yes, 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 yeah. You're on the West Coast, and I am on the East Coast in Maryland. So we're 3 hours apart, and somehow the universe found a way to connect us through another beautiful stole. That's a story for another time.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. How do you come into this conversation? How are you feeling in this moment, and how are you coming into this space that we are co-creating?
Genuinely, I have so much curiosity to see how it unfolds. I have deep alignment and resonance to the purpose, really, is what's showing up. Is like, I feel that this is, the foundation of our conversations, and a large part of the work that I've done personally and professionally is that inner landscape work. So I'm feeling joyous and curious.
Joyous and curious, masterful words, masterful words. And speaking of joyous, might you share what in the moment is bringing you the most light and excitement, and perhaps a place where your curiosity is leading you down some interesting, circuitous rabbit holes?
Mm. Well, I guess it's the intersection for me right now of contribution and community. And so I had a deep privilege to be able to facilitate a couple workshops this last weekend on really one of them. We got to create an I am statement, a mantra to help to recognize what we tell ourselves is so important. And so finding these pockets of times and places to take some of these tools, if you will, and to share, as we both love to share, and to do it in an environment that is so ready and receptive to taking that in, and really, I would say, was thirsty for it. And so it's sort of this next evolution for me of servant leadership. And it's bringing me a lot of joy, a lot of ease.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Servant's leadership. That so defines you, the violet that I
Thank you.
so very well. And that takes me into my next question, as this is kind of a getting to know you. And might you be comfortable sharing a story, if you will, either from your childhood or your adulthood, a story that gives us a further clue into who Violet is?
Mm. I think one of my strongest childhood memories was actually as we were landing in LAX, and there's all of these lights. And if one ever has the opportunity to visit Disney, there's a Peter Pan ride that has all these little white twinkling lights, and that's what it reminds me of. So I find it to be important as, we think of our origin stories. So I was born in Romania and then in Israel for a couple of years. And so coming to LA and the massive abundance of lights really made such an impression on me. I was 5 and I just had really never seen anything quite like it. So I still have that as a strong, kind of extraordinary childhood moment, being on this airplane and landing. And I think I had awe and bewilderment and really what an extraordinary experience to see all these lights. And that's what I remember. I remember landing and taking that in, of course, not really knowing exactly where we were landing, but just that the lights made such an impact and such an impression.
Yeah, just taking that all in, the lights, the landing, the bewilderment, the awe, all of that, and the way you describe it, it feels so present, even then, but it feels very present. I can visualize it in what you share. And at this point, do you feel ready to share your story of taking the sacred cracks and crevices in your life, one particular sacred crack and or crevice, and mining that for the wisdom that is the rubies from that experience?
Yeah, that sounds great. And what's showing up right now, I mean, just real time, is to realize that moment of landing in LA, what I didn't realize is, I didn't know a word of English. I did not know one word, nor did my parents, nor did my brother. And so what feels true to share is how both challenging and at times rewarding that is. So there's sort of the spiritual sense that I recognize, having gone to 3 different countries, 3 different languages, I do have an essence that we are all much more alike than we are different. But what it took to get there is sort of this sense of challenge in conversations, challenges in not understanding the language. And that sense of, the language and not knowing, sometimes the nuances. First, it was the basic vocabulary, but then it was like being pulled out, getting the support. I think this gifted me this sense of appreciation for language, the sense that the words matter, that at the end of the day, listening is really important, that communication can happen even sometimes without the spoken word. So it's changed my, I think I value it deeply, this desire to hear, to be heard, and how I lean in. I think that has all come from that space of young child where I did not feel understood, did not feel heard, did not feel that I was speaking the same language, because sometimes literally I wasn't. And so, and we can slow this down, but really what it has done is, teaching communication classes and understanding one another has been, I think, at the core of part of my commitment and my passion.
Very, very powerful. I'm struck by what you shared in terms of communicating without words, right? So there is this deep appreciation for words, language, using language as kind of a bridge. And yet there was also the gift of silence, if you will, no words, also conveying something. And I'd be curious if you wanted to delve deeper into a memory of that, and where that really first came to you, or when it first landed. Oh, okay, there are different ways of communicating, and they don't all involve words, and that might be one way that there was this shared humanity that came from the experience.
What's coming through right now is this memory of childhood. I was in an apartment in LA, and I remember playing with another child, and I did not know enough English to be able to converse with this other. There were a few of us that were kids, all kind of running around playing ball, and yet I had such joy and ease and fun and laughter. So there was something about realizing that we were getting along just fine, even though that we weren't really, I didn't understand what they were saying. And I'm sure I was speaking in Romanian to them. And of course they weren't understanding what I was saying. And it wasn't a barrier at school, the first year or so, it took some thought and practice, but there were plenty of times at the beginning that it was just kids, whether it was intuition, whether it was silence, or whether it was just this shared experience, created such a connection. And it did remind me that there was something that was accessible beyond the words.
Thank you for sharing that. And then perhaps if we might look at the other quote unquote side, right? These imagined polarities, if you will, of a circumstance where not sharing, not understanding language led to a crack and or crevice.
Yeah, there were a few for sure, a couple of times we were just like being pulled out, to get the extra support. The support was needed, but it didn't feel that great to be pulled out. I think I noticed that I was different. I noticed that I was struggling to understand the teacher back then. So there was definitely a sense of separateness, and it's little things that we kind of joke about now, but some words that sound the same that have entirely different meanings. Chicken and kitchen, for whatever reason, threw me off. And, you use the wrong one in a sentence and it's met with laughter. And, and then as a child trying to find literally their footing in a new country, it was challenging. It was challenging to find the words, find the way to express, find a sense of belonging, and feel kind of that sense of harmony and equality that I know I was craving at the time. So I don't know that there's one memory that stands out, but it was sprinkled throughout a number of incidences and years of the effort, the struggle to feel heard. I just been so present to that things that maybe right now I take for granted, that these words just naturally fly out of my mouth. But there was a time where it was actually, I needed to translate. The words that came in was of a different language. And I had to really consider, what is that word? And can I find it? And is it there? And if it's not, what do I do? And how to soothe that part of me that wanted to communicate and be heard. And at times that did not flow. It was not an easy space at times.
Thank you for sharing. And I'm taking in your words, that was not an easy space. And I wonder if we can delve a little bit deeper into that not an easy space. And as a child, it goes somewhere, right? We don't have the tools to really make sense of that not feeling a sense of belonging, that not fitting in, that being pulled out, that being having having attention drawn to you, and not the type of attention that one tends to want, right? So it's a delicate space, and I invite you, as you feel comfortable, to share accessing that place when there was resource for that, when there was room for that, when there was an understanding of the impact of that, that journey of just taking it in as a child will, swallowing it, keeping it someplace because one has to continue to go, and then the process of bringing it to the fore, to look at it, to learn from it, to be informed by it.
Yeah, thanks. I think for me, it was probably multi-layered. So there's this community that I want to belong to at school, and friends I want to make, and maybe a teacher I want to please. And also the fact that English wasn't the primary language at home. What I do remember, and is still often the case, my mom would say, "You're speaking too fast. I don't understand you because I'm speaking in English," and that's not her native tongue. How it showed up, and when I think I started to recognize it, is in the adult experience of where I'm feeling not heard, would create a deep pain, a deep, recognize that it was a triggered response of just layers and layers of years of feeling not heard, not understood. That this is the quick pathway to the not enoughness, that specific part of me. And so in my adult life and my married life, if there's something would happen and we would just not hear each other, or with my kids, wherever it was automatic and sort of volcanic inside, this sense of pain that would sort of envelop me. And at a certain place, I recognized that my reaction was probably bigger than what that specific moment was. And it made me have the opportunity to pause and say, so what is it that I'm really experiencing? It's not this moment on this Tuesday at 3:00, but it was like this historic piece of my little girl not feeling like she was heard, not really feeling that. And so, yeah. Well, you asked me the last question again, because I'm not sure if I'm with it completely or if there was more to that. But that was what was showing up, was as an adult, I recognized that there was a wounding there, a lack of feeling heard and seen. It's definitely has taken time to recognize that as the Ruby, but initially, for many years, it was the easy, quick button for me.
That was the wound, indeed, and I appreciate your going deep into that, and certainly with the sacred cracks and crevices, they can stay cracks and crevices. They can certainly remain in the spaces of activation, right, that are not in proportion to what is happening in the now moment. And so if you're open to delving a little bit deeper, as we typically do even in our person in engagement, and to the extent that you're comfortable and feel resourced, do you have a recollection of when or how this understanding of, okay, this activation is not in proportion to what is happening now, and relating it back to that young Violet coming into a country, not having the language and all that entails, moving into a different country, learning a language, having parents at home who don't speak the language. They don't really need to, because they're relying on their children to do that. So I'm curious about exploring, to the extent that you feel comfortable, that the resources, or sometimes it's spontaneous. There's a moment where it's like, wait a minute, it's not them, it's not the kids, it's not the husband, it's not the coworker. There's something else going on. And so sometimes it's therapy, sometimes it's reading a book. So whatever you recall that began to have you reconsider these cracks and crevices? Have you maybe set the possibility for taking them and beginning to alchemize and integrate in a way that you can be present and you
Mm-hmm.
understand where the activation came from?
There's two different kind of defining moments. One that I was really fortunate was in middle school when I was young. I do feel like I was a seeker, and I love music because I do think it's poetry with a beat. And so I was sourced quite a bit with music. And I was fortunate to read a book that really touched me deeply, and Illusions by Richard Bach, that I still remember, having picked up in 8th grade. And it got me to consider more than what was at face value. And while I didn't attach it to this specific wound, it began an opening. It began an awakening for me. It really did start me on this path to consider beyond what was in this physical moment, And if fast forward, then I was fortunate to be invited to a mindfulness, and now, fast forwarding to my 30s. And that was another thing that I recognized was like, there's what's happening and there's the relationship to what's happening. And in 2002, I began my mindfulness practice with a teacher, and that started me on this real inner work and this exploration and real commitment to understanding, well, wait, what is that reaction? What is happening? Why is that so intense? Oh my goodness. And so that I could start to follow the thread sometimes to the origin, if I can find, it, but at least to have the reverence and the appreciation for what it was, not just at the face value of this really strong reaction, but that the deep hurt and the sadness that were underneath all of that. And so that I could hold it with a lot more compassion and tenderness.
That was so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I wonder, Violet, if you can repeat the book, that you read in 8th grade, Illusions?
Illusions by Richard Bach.
By Richard Bach. Okay. Because that's a book you recommended to me. And I thought if Violet read it and it moved her, I need to read it as well too. Yeah.
And I don't know, from this lens and where we are in our journey today, how it'll be. But I'll tell you that my 13-year-old self was so appreciative and so needed that. So forever grateful. And a real quick tangent is there's also Jonathan Livingston Seagull, which is the same author that many have enjoyed. So there it is.
There it is. The whole point of this is to share resources that we have that have helped us as well too. And I also was struck by what you said, that you've always been a seeker, and so through that lens, this book came to you. So there was always going to be that that seeker ultimately leading to the journey inside, right? And then from that place, what you do now, which is to help others go inside to relate in the world.
Exactly. And it makes me really consider if that Ruby was, the turbulence, the not knowing, the not feeling grounded, the not having that ease of belonging, has been a huge inspiration for me to become a life coach, to support others on their path. There's senses that they don't have access to their wholeness. So it's no accident that this is the work that I do, because the life experience, my direct experience has led me there.
100%. And you know very well how much I love the gene keys.
Yes.
There isn't a conversation I think we have where I don't bring that up to you. And in the gene keys world, there is this, the word turbulence is considered a shadow. And then within that turbulence is the possibility and the seed for humanity, which feels to me resonant to your journey. You're discovering your own humanity, and
Yeah.
then leveraging that, emanating that out to others through the work that you do. And then from that place of humanity, there can be the highest level, which is compassion as well
Yes.
too. So turbulence to the humanity, to the compassion, that feels like, as you share, you the word, when you mentioned turbulence, I thought, oh, there it is, that kind of
There it
that
is.
journey of
I
yeah.
feel that to be true, that there's a lot of growth that can come from those moments that are turbulent and unsteady. That is the space of growth if we seek it. And that's what you're, I think, designing these conversations to recognize that we can seek it, we can choose it, we can lean into it. And so that curiosity on one hand, and then the self-compassion to hold ourselves as we go into these tender, delicate spaces. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Because it's our shared humanity, our compassion, to be able to hold space for one another, to be able to witness and see one another. Definitely.
So beautiful, and what you shared in terms of to witness each other. And so I ask you, how would you respond to someone who would say, but Violet, going inside hurts. I don't want to look at those spaces where the pain first settled in. I think that if I go into that space, I will never come out of it.
Mm.
What would you offer to such a fellow
Mhm.
human? So,
Yeah, I get it. I get it.
mhm,
And there's no have tos.
mhm, mhm,
Pay attention to when there is a readiness. So there's
mhm,
no have tos, and then there's no nevers. Never say never. At
mhm,
some moment, I have noticed that those who have that do have this notion that someday the staying the same is too painful. And then there is a willingness to perhaps peek in, perhaps just one toe in, so it doesn't
mhm,
have to be the full, dive from the deep end, and
mhm,
to find the softest, easiest way to do it, find the support. Is it one-on-one with a coach? Is it in a community, a sangha? What is the way that might serve you best? And
mhm,
ultimately, it's about the readiness and the desire. If there is a desire, there is
mhm,
a capacity for healing that can be cultivated,
mhm,
and it's really when one wants to, but there's no shoulds and no pressure and no
mhm,
have tos.
mhm. Yeah.
I understand the pain and I understand the discomfort of looking inside. It can
Mhm.
be maybe a little overwhelming at the beginning.
Yeah.
I get it. And I do think there's, to your point of rubies, unbelievable gems that one
Mhm,
cannot even imagine when we can tend to those wounds and really cultivate it. And there's a freedom and an openness and an expansion that I think people crave. They just don't know that that's what's on the other side. And
mhm,
so what's stopping us is we do tend as a humanity to avoid discomfort. We want to stay in our safety and our comfort zone.
mhm,
So one step, one breath at a time. Yeah,
mhm,
in the right
mhm.
space as we.
Wow, thank you so much. And I so appreciate that reminder that no shoulds, no have to. Everything is welcomed in this space, and coming from us, from the intention of compassion, the intention of each individual having their journey, right?
Yes.
That you get to choose, and this notion of taking it slow at a pace
Mhm.
that a friend of mine's always likes to say, moving at a speed of trust, which I
Mm,
so love, and I thank her
I
for that.
love
Moving
that.
at the speed, right, of trust, and trust in yourself, and trust in your container as well too. So it need not be forced, it need not be hurried, And it's really about going into yourself and making that decision for yourself, which is important. And another thread for the two of us is community. We both
Yes.
love that word. We both understand its importance early in our journey, and its continued importance as we go deeper and deeper, because it never ends, right? You're always unpeeling that onion. It never ends. It just is continued journey. And once you think you have it figured out, life comes and humbles you with an activation that you didn't see coming. It's a humbling journey, and it's
Yes.
never ending. And so I ask you if you would share, from your perspective, the importance of community. And here I'm going to also put in the word right community, and it
Mhm,
might
mhm.
I'm going to just put that in, and hear what your thoughts are to this word community, especially given the context of, I'm speaking for the United States here, this epidemic of loneliness that we keep hearing about.
Yes.
That is so critical, that the U.S. Surgeon General
Mhm,
is talking about it, and warning us about the consequences of this level of loneliness, isolation, and lack of community.
mhm. Oh my goodness, there's so much there that I want to speak to. And I want to start at least with the 2 points, and that is that I believe we're wired, actually physically wired, to be in community, and that
Mhm.
was our natural design. And so when we're in conversation, there's oxytocin that's released that is
Mhm.
healthy. And there's so much science now that shows that actually our health, the longevity, is based on
Mhm.
the relationships we have, the depth and breadth of our relationships. So I feel that I came to it from a sense of intuitiveness, but science is really
Mhm.
there to tell us that these
Mhm.
relationships can be really foundational. And when you say right community, and I love that you introduced me to that, there's a truth, there's a resonance in our connection and our vibration and our, real conversations that helps
Mhm.
to elevate. And so my experience in right community has been of resilience, as we've gone through things that we never would have imagined, as COVID, and had to be
Yeah.
in unknown times for such a long period of time. And how do we do that if one person loses hope? I see the
Mhm.
right community as being the buoy, that
Mhm.
place that can help support and foster hope if we've
Mhm.
lost it. It can help
Mhm.
provide the mirror. And
Mhm.
so I have known, witnessed time and time again, and experienced directly that the strength and the resilience and the positivity that I experience from being in right community,
Mhm.
and that sometimes means we need to lean in and need to be open and need to be curious and to put a little bit of time into appreciating, of course, when that shows up, and also of how we open to it and lean in
Mhm.
to it. And so
Mhm.
that's what
Mhm.
is showing up to share. I could speak on community for quite a long time, but let me pause for a moment. But it's the part that's unity, right? It's the
Yeah.
sense of unity that I
Mhm.
know is such, I just feel it. I mean, I'm just vibrating. I'm like, oh, yes, yes. It's just absolutely. It's food for the soul for me.
Yeah. Yeah. The same for me as well too. Imagine my life. I couldn't imagine life in general without community, and from the rubies coming from my cracks and crevices, being the importance for my soul of being in community that is supportive, as you say, that leans in, that gives as much as I put in, um, and this basic human need to be understood and seen. It's like water and sun to plants. Really is, that, and we don't. I don't know that it's possible to to transform cracks and crevices and our wounding and hurts and scars without without that at least one other person, because the community is two, right? And in the Christian theology, it's like where one or more gather, there is community. I'm completely paraphrasing it, but that's my understanding of it, that to have at the very least, I mean, even that is a gift, one soul that feels like, yes, I feel at home here, as we always say. The sense of safety is so key. And I think where there is a sense of loneliness and isolation, even if one has many quote unquote humans around us, if there isn't this sense of I'm heard, I'm seen, I'm valued, I'm understood, I'm reflected back to in a way that reminds me of who I really am, then it doesn't matter the number of friends. There isn't anything penetrating the soul there. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I want to reflect that back. I think it's how it's penetrating the soul that matters, and that our craving, our desire is there for that, for that deep sense of knowing, of being seen, and as you said, so that place of leaning in and being heard, and as we've said, reciprocity. So there's a being there, and then a receiving, and there's this beautiful sense of growth that can happen because of community. And I feel like this relates. So I just want to add that this growing space is also being seen when we're not, perfect. It's being as we are, being authentic. And that's what I think is so needed, because how to move through our crevices and cracks is not needing to wait till we have achieved this illusion of perfection. There's that word again. And so I think that's the beauty, is like, hey, I see you and I accept you for who you are as you are. And that is where the gift of community is. We can't do that work on our own. Is I see you, hear you, and I accept you as you are. So that's the coming together in this space that I think is really healing and helps to bridge to that sense of finding that ruby. Like, oh yeah, these crevices, they were difficult, and they landed because there wasn't a compassionate present force. But we can create that compassionate presence at any moment, and then help guide towards that ruby.
Indeed. And you also brought up the word healing, and that feels like right community, where it is a place of healing, because it gets messy. It gets, there's that ugly cry that comes, and that moment of such tenderness that comes out of nowhere. And to go through that and look at someone and they're looking at you with just love in their eyes, no judgment, that does something to the soul. That does something that I feel like, for me, it's how the cracks and the crevices have alchemized, how they're integrated for me. So the healing is key. This space here. So wow, we went into some deep spaces here. And I'm want to invite anything else that you'd like to share, anything that came up that you want to delve a little bit deeper into. I just leave a space for what is arising in your heart, in your soul at this moment, that feels that feels a desire to express itself at this moment.
Nothing's immediately showing up, but I'm just reflecting back on the intention, maybe, of just, this comfortable conversation, and the beauty of coming together to recognize maybe also a commonality, that there's so many of us do have these cracks and crevices. And so I'm just feeling the desire to bring voice to that.
Mhm.
As we talked
Mhm.
about, the loneliness is to know that we're not the only ones, and whoever is with us in this space is not the only one, and that this is
Mhm.
part of our shared humanity too, is to recognize that.
Mhm. Mhm. Yes, yes, yes. The commonality, and I think the commonality sharing the same beginning as community,
Yes.
right? And then this shared humanity, the unity, right?
Yeah.
There's something that ties us all together, and there really isn't anything, any experience that is not understood on some level uh, by humans when we allow ourselves to go to that tender place of familiarity. That's what empathy is, right? And
Mm-hmm.
able to kind of touch that space, um, resource ourselves and touch it as a reminder, right, of the uniqueness and yet the commonality of this human experience, this human journey that we are all on.
The uniqueness of our individual memory of that,
Mhm, mhm,
crack and
mhm,
crevice, and the
mhm.
humanity that we all have them.
Yeah.
That is
Mhm,
absolutely the reality of
mhm,
every childhood's journey.
mhm,
Of that is our shared
mhm.
humanity that we have walked through,
Yeah.
and
Mhm,
had
mhm,
these cracks. And mine has maybe a unique story that
mhm.
might be slightly different in yours, and yet we know for sure that we all have them. Yeah.
For sure. Even with the two of us being parents of immigrants, right? and, and the commonality in that, and realizing that we live in a time where we have many humans leaving their homes, many humans being put in situations where they don't understand the language, they don't understand the context, they don't understand the mores, they don't understand the unspoken understandings that go on because
Yeah.
it's a new environment, and how tender that is, how vulnerable that is, how disorienting that is for those who are going through that, and perhaps then being able to re-enter, if you will, from a resource place, those cracks and crevices, to allow for I see you, understand that this is not easy, this
Yeah.
grounding in a new home that perhaps you didn't really want to leave, but that circumstances in this life led to that decision to be made, as it was for my parents and perhaps for yours as well too. So thank you so much for sharing your that experience, sharing your life, sharing your wisdom, sharing your heart, sharing your light in this first episode of SCCaR, Sacred Cracks, Crevices, and Rubies. I hope this is not our last conversation and the first of many conversations that we have here, humbly sharing for whatever souls find their way to this conversation, because I do believe that whatever we do from a co-creative space, and we always talk about this in our conversations too, that the muses have a plan, that the
Mhm.
universe has a plan. We were not brought together by
Yeah.
accident. Perhaps this is one of the many ways that the universe wanted Violet and Guirlaine to engage and bring something into the world that it could feel would be of service. So
Thank you. Thank you. Always feels joyful and miraculous. So grateful. Thank you. I'm looking forward to many more conversations.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so we started with a grounding,
Mm.
and I would love for us to begin concluding. If you feel complete, I want to check in with you. Do you feel a sense of completion
Yeah,
at the
definitely.
moment? Okay, thank you so much. And with that, perhaps we go into a closing grounding
Great.
um, would you like to lead that, or would you like for me to
I'm
lead
going to
that?
receive. I'd
Okay.
love to hear yours.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much. And so we'll kind of get comfortable in our seats, and then perhaps feet on ground if that feels comfortable, and if possible, perhaps bare feet on ground to really feel, so that there's no barrier between ground and feet. And as you feel comfortable, inviting a slow closing of the eyes. What we're going to do for our closing exercise is to really go into the body. We had this conversation, and we just want to see where's the body, what is coming to the fore. So we'll check in with the feet. This is the part of the body that is closest to the earth, and this is the part of the body that bears all of our weight, literally and figuratively. And so bringing attention to the feet and any messages that are coming from that part of the body. And then inviting a relaxation of the feet. Bringing attention up to the knees, another part of the body that holds a lot of weight as we move in the world, for those of us who can. What are the knees wanting to convey in this moment? Bringing attention to the back of the calves, really feeling that intersection between the back of the calves and the surface of the chair, wherever the calves are resting. Not an area we place a lot of attention to, so is there any information coming from our calves, the back of the calves? Bring attention to the back of our thighs, feeling the weight of our body, seated or really bringing attention to just maybe leaning more into the back of the calves, at the back of the thighs. Calves is in my mind. Bring attention to the belly, in particular, the area right below the belly button. If you feel so comfortable and so moved, perhaps bringing one or both hands to the lower belly, often known as the second brain. What does it feel there? What information may be coming from that part of the body? Bringing attention, perhaps a hand or two, and this is bare skin to bare skin on the heart. Where is the heart? How does it feel in this moment? Is there any message that the heart is wanting to convey? Do you feel the heartbeat, that rhythm that became so familiar over the course of 9 months of our development in the womb? Maybe leaning into that heartbeat just a little. Bringing attention up to the throat chakra. How does the throat feel? We did a lot of conversing. Is there a sense of satisfaction? Is there a sense of ease in the throat? Or is there constriction? What is the throat conveying? Bringing attention to the cheek muscles. This is another area where we hold a lot, often without even being aware of it. Perhaps if it feels comfortable, softening the cheek muscles, consciously bringing softening energy there. The jaw, also softening the jaw. Bringing attention to the eyes, the inner eye sockets. How does that feel? So the eyebrow, softening eyebrows, softening the forehead. Paying attention to the shoulders. How does that feel? Perhaps gently bring the shoulders up to the ears and then slowly bringing it down, relaxing the shoulders. Any message coming from the shoulders? Bringing attention to the back of the neck. Back of the throat. Bringing attention to the upper back, in particular the area between the shoulder blades, the back of the heart, the back of the lungs. Any communication coming from there. Bringing attention to the lower back, another place that can hold tension. Softening the lower back as you feel comfortable. And then we'll conclude by bringing attention to our hands. Both hands, fingers in the hands, the palm of the hands. Just like the feet, the hands take in a lot of information as well too. And so, is there anything that the hands would like to convey? Where are they now? How do they feel? Might we consider bringing some relaxation and gratitude to the hands who do so much, that do so much? And then just quickly scanning the body. Is there any place that's calling for your attention? Any place that's calling for some relaxation? Any place that feels constriction in any way? And then we'll breathe together. We'll breathe in through the nostrils. And then as we breathe out, we'll do it audibly. And then as you feel comfortable, very, very slowly begin to open the eyes, really, really slowly, taking your time, no rush in the SCCaR space. And then as it's comfortable, we'll meet again through this technology. And so thank you again, dear Violet, for your presence. I, as always, feel so enriched, and I cannot put into words the level of gratitude, the level of thankfulness, the level of love, and just so humbled by your openness, and so humbled by your your trust in joining me in this experiment. I'm deeply, deeply moved and touched. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Mm.
So until we meet again, I bid you adieu and a beautiful and blessed week.
Thank you. Thank you, dearest.
Thank you.